All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nicole Holybar Walker. I am a managing director of leadership engagement here at the Emory Alumni Association. Before we get started, we have a few housekeeping announcements for today's session. Please note the views and opinions expressed in the Learning and Development webinar series are those of our individual speakers and do not necessarily reflect the official policy, position, or views of Emory University, the Emory Alumni Association, or its affiliates. The content provided in this program is for informational purposes only and should not be construed as an endorsement by Emory University or the Emory Alumni Association. Please note that this session is being recorded. So please be sure to keep your microphones muted to avoid disruptions, though we do encourage you to keep your camera on. If you have any questions throughout the session, please feel free to share them in the chat box. With that, I am very excited to introduce our featured speaker, Samantha Carroll. Samantha Carroll is a 2001 graduate of Emory College and is a trusted communications advisor, leading Once Upon a Brand as the CEO and principal consultant. Samantha excels at driving high-profile communications projects, ideating strategies, and defining messaging development for mature and growth stage clients in healthcare, health, and social advocacy, education, and technology sectors. Her work has benefited organizations around the world, such as Walden University, Mary's Center Nonprofit Hospital, IPS Learning, Maryland Fleet Week, and many, many more. Samantha has been featured as an expert on the Catalent blog, a series writer for Bloomberg Businessweek's MBA Journal, and was a founding case author finalist for the Hot Mamas Project at the George Washington University Center for Entrepreneurial Excellence. In 2023, she led Once Upon a Brand to win a Public Relations Society of America Pepperpot Award for Excellence in Executive Communications. She's been invited to be a speaker at Georgetown University's McDonough School of Business, where she also obtained her MBA, and enjoys sharing the latest research and trends in the areas of brand strategy, communications, and stakeholder relations. Please help me welcome Samantha Carroll.
Thank you so much, Nicole, for that incredible introduction and warm welcome. And hello to everyone who's on the webinar today. I'm so excited to share this topic with everyone. And as you're listening, if any questions come up, we'll see if we have some time at the very end and you can just put them into the chat. So this is called Become the Leader You Always Wanted to Be. And today we're really going to dig into this topic of leadership. Before I get into the substance of the webinar, I wanted to just share a quick quote from leadership expert John Maxwell that says, "A leader is one who knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way." And I love this quote. We may have a lot of different bosses or people who are higher up than we are, but a leader is a really unique distinction given to those who set a vision and take others really along the journey of realizing it. Our starting point for today is really just to kind of review a few reasons why you might be listening, some assumptions I had about why you may have decided to come today. Number one is you might be looking to find new opportunities to develop your leadership skills. Maybe you want to learn more about communicating with others, about your own leadership style or your experience. Perhaps you're seeking a new role or position that's more aligned with your goals or values. You also might be in a leadership position already and want to help your team or colleagues develop their capabilities for leadership as well. And finally, maybe you're looking to put a plan in place for opportunities like promotion that may garner additional leadership opportunities. So we're going to really try to touch on all of those throughout today's presentation. A little bit about the agenda. We're just going to start by talking a little bit about what leaders are versus what managers are and talk through some of the differences so we can really understand where we're headed. We're then going to talk about developing your leadership skills why your why matters, leveraging your value and positioning yourself for new opportunities. And we'll also talk a little bit about the role of mentorship in 2024. We're then going to end by actually talking about another type of leadership opportunity, which is board membership, which is an important leadership role that many of us are looking to learn more about, and a type of role that can really help position yourself for other leadership roles. First, I wanted to touch on a little bit about Once Upon a Brand and myself, so you do have a better understanding of my own background and leadership experience. Nicole gave me a fantastic intro. But basically, I founded Once Upon a Brand in 2012 after working as a federal sector consultant in communications for Booz Allen Hamilton coming out of business school at Georgetown University. Once Upon a Brand, as Nicole mentioned, is a brand and communication strategy consultancy. We do specialize in work for healthcare, higher ed, social impact, and technology sectors. And our job is really to increase brand awareness, build understanding, create greater visibility for clients, and really rely on industry best practices, pulling in market research, identifying what trends in communication are going on that could then align well with clients' goals. We engage stakeholders to address change management initiatives, design messages to align with organizational goals, and often work with leadership to build out strategies for thought leadership. And finally, we advise C-suite leaders and top executives to accelerate their own brand growth, whether it's for the organization or for themselves outside of the organization. Nicole mentioned a lot of my background, so I'll just kind of skim over this quickly. But I do work with Emory University as a communications advisor. In my board membership, since we're going to touch on that at the very end, I am a nonprofit board chair for an education committee, as well as a member of a communications committee. Outside of my work for Once Upon a Brand, I also do speaking and training on various topics related to communications and communications for leaders. So that's why I'm so excited about this topic, because leadership and communication really are kind of best friends, and we're going to talk about the reasons why. So let's first think a little bit about what do leaders specifically do. And of course, this is not an exhaustive list, but these are some major distinguishing factors for leaders when we compare them to managers. So one thing leaders do is they build networks and tap networks to acquire knowledge and resources. They gain feedback and support for their ideas and vision, and really use those networks to think about bigger picture ideas. They can influence decision-making by other parties and shape actions by then galvanizing support for those ideas and their vision. And they also often identify hiring needs, or they might be pulling in human capital resources, and can also leverage board relationships to understand priorities and identify the alignment of values and tactical goals. Let's flip over to managers now. So when we look at managers, we see that managers are really the ones that are managing the technical execution and operations in order to carry out that leader's vision. So they may manage some direct reports. They often report to a senior leader themselves. They may be making project recommendations or providing feedback or receiving feedback. They also collaborate with other teams on projects, and they absorb knowledge, perhaps through mentorship. They may be attending different conferences or other corporate events. And when we look at these two mindsets, we see that the manager is really more aligned to the tactical execution and operations, whereas a leader is the one who actually sets that vision forward, um, with the manager collaborating to execute it. So how do we think about strengthening our leadership muscles? I've curated this list really to kind of outline just a couple of ways we can do this. Again, not an exhaustive list, but some ideas that can really provide a good starting point. And as you're thinking about gaining more experience and then being able to really communicate and leverage that experience, these are some ways that can be really helpful. So one thing is starting or joining an existing company group, joining an existing company group or starting your own, or a committee or some larger initiative within the organization. The reason this can be so effective is because often you may be matched to partner with people across the organization that perhaps you didn't know. So it increases your visibility within that organization or community. And it also lets others learn about your style and how you lead in different group settings. The next idea is the old faithful lunch and learn based on your topic of expertise. Um, but an example could be if, let's say you work in technology or for the IT department and you're facing challenges with folks not understanding how to use a certain software or a new app that's in that organization. So you may decide to do a workshop session that gets you up in front of a group. What it does is it allows you to provide knowledge and it helps others know that you might be that go-to person when they're coming up against problems in that particular area. You could pitch yourself to speak at a local event or a local conference, which of course is a great way to increase credibility to be seen in a different leadership type position. Contributing to industry publications is also really a wonderful way to increase your visibility and help establish that executive brand or grow an existing executive brand. And then we think about this piece of communication, and communicating clearly about awards and recognition is really a learned skill. Um, Often people that I work with, senior leaders, CEOs, uh, people who are on different boards of directors, while they're very proud and honored perhaps to have won awards, they're not always comfortable putting it out there or letting people know about it. So it's really a skill that's learned over time and a comfort and comes really with confidence in doing it. I always say, don't hide the wow, because that recognition is really your moment to shine. And it's like putting a spotlight on you as a leader, that you've taken that risk of having others review work, and having it be seen as a piece of excellence in the industry, that you've really been recognized for that excellence. And so in that way, you're also acting as an example for others. Finally, helping to motivate team members and connecting people so they can establish new beneficial relationships is also a great way to strengthen those leadership muscles. So when we think about all of the different traits that make a really strong leader, it's so fascinating what people's idea is when it comes to this most important trait. And there was actually a HubSpot survey not too long ago, where 44% of respondents, which was the majority category, agreed that the ability to communicate makes a good leader. So of everything else, whether it's the ability to take risks or the quality of their vision, having a growth mindset, being reliable, responsible, communication was the most important trait in a leader. So we see communication really is the key. Why does communication matter to leadership? If we deep dive into why it matters, we think about how it connects to helping you become a better leader and the leader you always wanted to be. According to the 2023 Global Leadership Development Study out of Harvard Business Publishing Corporate Learning called Ready for Anything, they identified some key challenges that today's leaders face. As a chief people officer at a global tech company said in this particular quote on the right-hand side of this slide, employees now expect their manager to care about them personally. They will share that they are emotionally struggling, which rarely happened before. One of the changes is being able to more holistically engage an employee appropriately, but many leaders still don't know how to do it. So interestingly, if we look at, and I know it's a little bit small on your screen, so I'll go through it so you can understand it better, but this really shows us the skills we need to build to humanize leadership. And that's a really big topic now because, the question here basically says, how important are the following leadership skills to meeting your expected business needs in the next year? The top categories listed included empathy and communication, feedback, sharing and listening, high emotional and social intelligence, and the ability to manage conflict among team members. And finally, the intent and ability to promote diversity and inclusion in the workplace. So when we look at the importance of communication as a leader, we think about how we can become stronger in all of these different areas of communication. And when we think about the strengths of leaders and what people want to see in their leaders, we see this focus on the ability to communicate, to act with transparency. We think about building trust and credibility and really enabling a hearty exchange of diverse ideas. So if we know that communication is vital to a leadership role and we want to move into that new leadership role, it's important that we think about those skills and how they can really connect you to opportunities. So the first thing we want to think about is really understanding the major issues of the company or organization or stakeholders in the leadership role that you may be seeking. So whether it's a board of directors, whether it's a promotion or making a lateral move to lead a team within your current organization, we want to better understand all of these big issues going on. Once we have an idea of those major issues, we want to think about and identify our why. If you're not familiar with what this means, our why is that values-driven statement that lets other people really understand what gets you up in the morning. And we're going to talk more about that in a minute. Then we're going to think about all of the experiences we have had throughout our professional life and connect it to those values. The final piece of this is becoming your own brand and being able to really communicate that unique value proposition. So we can almost imagine there's a little string and we want to connect your unique value back to the top with those really important major issues we had a better understanding of, so that we can clearly lay out for someone who's in a decision-making role that you could be a wonderful leader for that particular group or organization. So flexing your own communication muscles really can help you develop those leadership muscles as well. So let's think about this. Why? So when we think about our why, we need to better understand what our motivation is, really. Why do we get up in the morning? Yes, I do think of my first cup of coffee of the day, and that sometimes is what I need to get up. But in this case, it's not that cup of coffee. We want to really think about what's your mission. And we think about a company's values, right? So we think about the mission statement and the vision statement. And when we think about becoming the leader we always wanted to be, we want to think about a really strong alignment between what drives us professionally and how to frame that value so you can be able to communicate it to others. This activity really requires us to be self-reflective and ask ourselves, why do we do what we do? Or why do we want to do something different? And then third, we need to follow this example until we arrive at our answer, which is our value. I wanted to give you a quick example of this. So I might communicate to someone that I work in communications for corporate and nonprofit clients, and I help them better connect to their audiences. Then I might ask myself, why? Why do I do that? Well, I do that because I passionately believe that when audiences have information, knowledge, tools, and resources, they can make better decisions. So if I were to think about the goal of my work, what really gets me up in the morning, what keeps me motivated and showing up every day, I might say, I enable impact-focused organizations and institutions to expand their influence by creating deeper connections with their stakeholders. So there's this change between focusing on the accomplishment, saying, well, I'm really ready for this role because I've done X, Y, and Z, to changing it a little bit and really kind of flipping it on its side to focus more on the value that you can extend. There are lots of different ways tactically that we can make this happen, but when we focus on that value, we start to create a reputation for the impact that we have on an organization. So how do we translate that value? Now we know our why. We want to start with that impact values driven statement, and we want to cultivate 2 or 3 achievement stories that show how we've been able to create value for organizations. These stories help us to position ourselves as a leader, and we want to really think about being sort of an opportunity detective and looking through different communities, groups, organizations, institutions, networks to really figure out what different opportunities we may be able that sort of could enable us to really set that vision and establish an opportunity for ourselves to lead others. We also really need to make sure that we're communicating effectively and clearly so that others know what the value is of working with us. And finally, as I said in a previous slide, don't hide the wow, right? So we don't just want to be confident. We often need to be confident in order to communicate that credibility and that trust to others, that they can trust us as their leader. We want to let others know about our accomplishments and our achievements by, as I said, really focusing on the impact that they've had. So we're going to switch gears a tiny bit to think about what mentors and mentees can really teach us about our own leadership and how we want to shape that leadership style. When we think about mentors today, we think about one thing that they do, which is to really be able to share lessons from their experience. And this is really an invaluable asset of this type of relationship. They can also help us problem solve through challenges. So maybe they have been there before, they've experienced a particular challenge, and they can then help walk us through some of the ways that they were successful in addressing those challenges. Mentors can also teach us how to act as a network connector. So if a mentor has already led a particular group or done something that you would like to do, they can be an incredible connector to those people in their network that can open doors for you, identify opportunities for you, um, even just provide insights or resources that could be helpful in your leadership journey. Finally, they really allow you to also test out strategies or ideas and gain feedback. Um, it's a really unique relationship that's a trusted relationship where someone's not judging you, they're not, grading your work. It's really more about a collaborative relationship where you can bounce ideas off of them and really leverage their experience to say, hey, I was thinking about doing X, or I'd really like to get a group together so that I can lead this effort. What's your feeling about this? Or what's your experience with this? If we flip the script and look at mentees on the other side, mentees really can teach us a lot of things too, especially when it comes to our own leadership style and the way that we want to lead. And so they can provide insights about the challenges or the needs or pain points in their roles. So as a mentor, it can be really eye-opening to understand that other perspective. They can also lend lessons about ways to improve or adjust our leadership role so that maybe they learn best a certain way, or maybe they can communicate what is challenging for them. And then we can adjust the way that we are leading in that relationship. Finally, it's really helpful to work with mentees to identify strengths and weaknesses, as I mentioned, in our own leadership practices. So asking for feedback, asking, how would that make you feel if I led my team in this way? It's a really wonderful chance to gain those insights from someone who's in a different kind of role. I wanted to give you a couple of ideas of useful resources as you are thinking about expanding your leadership skills, looking for new leadership opportunities, kind of brainstorming how to become that leader you've always wanted to be. And one is leadership certificate programs. Many different universities, institutions, organizations offer certificate programs in leadership, and that's really a great differentiator. Um, if you're in an existing company, but also if you're not, or if you're between jobs, it's a great way to kind of bridge that gap in terms of your skills. And there's also a lot of virtual programs out there. So if you're not able to do an in-person certificate program, there are a ton that are online as well. And what it also enables you to do is really network with other leaders who are interested in that particular subject as well. Um, Another is what are called board readiness programs. A board readiness program is really an opportunity for you to perhaps prepare different materials that you may need as you might be wanting to apply to a board of directors or an advisory board, whether it's volunteer or paid. It lets you connect again with others who may have similar goals, who are also looking for board seat acquisition, and then really puts you in a place where you're then ready to apply for different board positions. The third idea or resource down is executive coaching or cohorts, which can be really helpful in connecting you again with different strategic networks. Of course, LinkedIn and other professional networking groups, conferences that are related to the topic of leadership management, people development, human resources can all be really important and really offer a wealth of knowledge and resources when it comes to kind of building out your leadership profile. The third to last, ERGs at your company, employee resource groups, can also be a great way to gain information, learning and development, or training teams at your company, especially reaching out to them to understand how you might be able to contribute in those areas and really set yourself apart as a leader. And then finally, we think about our colleagues. So our colleagues are a really valuable resource in helping us gain feedback about our leadership style or chat about other opportunities they may have found And they may have been able to also identify useful connections through their networks that can help you as well. And the list just goes on and on, but these are a couple of ideas to consider as you're thinking about strengthening your leadership skills. I did mention that second one down, board readiness programs. And if this does apply to you, um, I wanted to go over just sort of some tips and tricks to become board ready. And one particular way to expand your leadership role is to really consider joining some kind of a board where you get to really help set that vision. These kinds of opportunities can help you also connect with communities of fellow ambitious leaders. And so when we think about being that opportunity detective, this is a great way to do that. You want to be able to share knowledge and gain knowledge from those who are on the same track and have a strong interest in advocating for an organization. So whether it's a nonprofit or a corporation or a private company, um, it's really important and helps increase your visibility among those leaders, as well as providing you with the opportunity to network or connect with those current board members. Creating a board ready bio and elevator pitch are two communications pieces that really are critical when you're going through that application process in terms of communicating the value that you've had on organizations, going back to your why statement, and helping to really fill in sort of the puzzle pieces between where you're at now in your career and where you want to go. The fourth bullet down is about really gaining a deeper understanding of the unique behavior patterns or strengths that you have and ways to really stretch yourself or expand in different areas to be able to identify what those areas are. Um, so this can really happen through a number of different assessments. There are so many different kinds of DISC assessments or Myers-Briggs or other kinds of assessments that you may have seen out there that are strength-based assessments or behavioral strength assessments. And it's so helpful really to understand how we work and then allowing us to kind of connect those strengths or tendencies with that impact that we've been able to share to organizations. The other thing I love about assessments is it also can help us build out those examples of value versus the task list that so many of us have in resumes. So we think through what those 2 or 3 achievement stories could be based on. And the outcomes of those assessments can be really useful in that exercise. Confidence is also a really big piece of becoming board ready. And so increased confidence to move forward in your board journey is really another value add of different programs out there. Gaining a clearer idea of really how to leverage relationships and then, providing you with specific guidance to prepare your roadmap toward the boardroom. This is the part where I give a shameless plug. I, along with Annette Bloom-Pearson, who is another Emory University career coach, have joined forces to create a program called Board of Advisors. So if board readiness is something that you're interested in, we do have a program. It's coming up pretty soon. The first is starting this Friday. It is totally virtual, about 75-minute virtual sessions every other week. And many of the leadership readiness ideas that we've talked about today, DISC assessment, mock interview preparation, curated worksheets, and online support are all included in this. The other thing is if you are looking to connect with current board members, the speakers that we have are all current, either nonprofit, public board, private board members, and they are all incredible. And then finally, if you are just interested in hearing what some top leaders are saying about the boardroom, about what it takes to be perceived and to actually be a strong leader, we've launched a fireside chat series on YouTube called Illuminators. Um, and these are really corporate stars. So if you're interested in just listening to some videos, that's also a great way, or podcasts even on leadership. At this point, I think we could do a couple of questions, Nicole. I can't see the chat myself, so maybe you can help me out.
Sure. Yeah. If anyone has questions, feel free to go ahead and drop them in the chat. I'm happy to kick us off because I wrote down a couple of notes. Just being in regular conversation with alumni, and also being a leader myself. One question that came to mind for me is kind of to act on a lot of what you shared today. I think we really need confidence as a leader. Do you have any recommendations for leaders that are struggling with that initial confidence and belief in themselves as new leaders, and the
Mhm.
best ways to kind of build that up?
Yeah, it's such a good question. So thank you for getting us off on that foot. Um, Number one, I think peer feedback is so important, and especially talking to, I hope that everyone has the opportunity to, if they don't already have them now, to develop relationships that really act as kind of brand champions. I know for myself, there are a number of people in my network who I think, especially when maybe I wasn't even thinking of it, and I'm having a conversation and someone says, "Gosh, Sam, you're so good at X, Y, and Z." It's an incredible confidence booster. And so I think hearing feedback from others, whether it's, peer to peer, or even in some kind of review cycle, if it's like 360-degree review at your work, or excuse me, in some other way, I think that's one way to build that confidence. The second way, I think, is really just through experience. Um, Entrepreneurs, I think this can especially relate to, because we don't always know when we're starting a company or launching a startup, what that journey is going to be like. And so I think sometimes pushing ourselves just to do it and get out of that comfort zone is an incredible way to build that confidence and remind ourselves um, that we took a risk. And that's what leaders do. Leaders take risks. And so, there are, and then, going back to the assessments, I mean, sometimes it's so interesting. I went through one a few months ago, and it really validated my own work behaviors and what comes sort of naturally to me. And when we can really purposefully identify those, I think it gets easier to talk about it. I think it helps fuel that process of uh, being okay telling other people that we are really good at this, or we have done this before. And sometimes it's really hard to think about, what value have I really had on an organization? And those can be a really kind of powerful tool in helping us sort of connect the dots and identify what those sort of achievement stories are.
Thank you. All right, we don't have any other questions yet, so I will ask you another one on my mind.
Yeah.
Something that I feel like working at Emory, I've really encountered a lot of is younger people stepping into leadership very early on in their careers, or
Mhm.
even maybe even before they graduate. Do you have any advice for younger leaders that, maybe are things that they wouldn't have gained through the experiences and time that and someone that steps into leadership later in their career might have? Are there any missteps that you think maybe young leaders should take into consideration as they start their leadership journey?
Yeah, it's really interesting. And yes, absolutely. I think younger people are starting businesses, they are connecting online, they're becoming social influencers. It's so remarkable. And I think one of, as someone who's in communications, I think a lot about the influence of technology and communication out there. And um, I, I really think that, you know, the good, bad, and the ugly of social media and seeing other young people step out and do something which is perceived as really cool lets other people say, you know what, I might not be, that person online who's talking about X, Y, and Z, but they're my age. And I see that happening. I could do that too. And that's such a powerful ideal, I think, that they have. The one thing I would caution younger people is is not to ignore the experience and history of older generations, because excuse me, the idea of working in excuse me, diverse, inclusive organizations is that they're not just going to be working with all young people, right? They're going to be working with people from different backgrounds and of different ages and different experiences that they've had. And so being able to really incorporate lessons, I think, from other audiences and populations is so valuable, especially in going after these leadership roles where, the stakeholders you might be leading might not, be another young person. It's also interesting that I've spoken with a number of people lately who joined, as I mentioned, board of directors at a younger age. And it can be so valuable. I did not do that. I joined a board, later in my career. Um, but I have really come to appreciate what it can do. And I almost, I really do kind of wish that I had known this earlier in my career because it connects you at that younger age um, leaders who maybe have been working for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And it can really increase your visibility in that organization, or even sort of expanding the opportunities available to you, um, maybe outside of your existing company. So I think being young and going for it is amazing. And, I have four girls and I encourage all of them to kind of go for it in life. But I also think it's really important to consider the ideas and the experience of others and the perspectives of others when you're forming your vision to move forward.
Thank you. All right. I will give everyone one more moment to pop some questions if they have any in the chat. I will ask one more of my own just to give some folks some time.
Sure.
Um, you mentioned several resources throughout today's presentation that those listening can take advantage of. To you, what have been the most valuable resources as you learned, as you've learned to become a leader, be it workshops or assessments or books? Is there anything that really pops out in your mind as being most influential to you?
Um, all of the above, yes. I I think the most meaningful lesson to myself in my own leadership style has been that kind of risk taking, because there's sort of this like dichotomy in me of not being a personal risk taker, but being a professional risk taker. And I have sort of had to figure out what that balance is. And so, for example, when I wrote for Bloomberg Business Week, which was just Business Week at the time, I think I was 26 years old, 25, no, I think I was 25 or 26 years old. And there was a writing competition in business school. I obviously love to write, and I thought this would be phenomenal. Like, this is a great, I had an appreciation for the brand. I read Business Week and I just went for it because I thought, well, what is there really to lose is just the time that it takes me to fill this out. Well, it was really it was such an influence on me through business school. It was something I could talk about frequently and tell people about. It increased my credibility. It gave me experience. And so I think being that kind of opportunity detective and finding ways to lead, whether they're kind of, I think they need to be aligned to your goals and your passion, but it's also really important sometimes to step out of that comfort zone, because when we do, it's really an opportunity to gain confidence. It's hard to gain confidence when we're doing something that feels really safe. And so taking those risks, for me, has been an important piece of gaining that leadership experience and know-how.
Great, thank you. All
Yeah.
right. Well, I think we are just about through with the Q&A.
Okay.
So,
And I'm just going to put up a couple of ways. If anybody's interested in the board readiness, there are a couple ways you can connect or learn more on LinkedIn, on Instagram. We do have a website, and then you can always email us at lightherwaycommunity@gmail.com. Feel free to screenshot, because I'm going to go to the next slide.
and I'll make sure to share this.
And okay, great. And here's another slide just with how you can connect with Once Upon a Brand or myself. I am always happy to talk about communication and leadership. So if anyone wants to reach out or has a question that pops in their head later today, please feel free to ping me.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Samantha. This has been a really insightful conversation. And thank you so much to everyone for joining us today. I really encourage you all to take some time to schedule a complimentary career strategy session. If you need additional assistance, as Samantha mentioned, she is one of our official alumni career coaches and advisors members, and provides the opportunity for you all to connect with her as alums of Emory. You'll receive an email from us soon after today's session with some more information about signing up for those. But we'll also share a short survey after the event to get your feedback. So please be sure just to take a few minutes, share your thoughts about today's session and also what you'd like to see in future programs through Emory's Career and Professional Development webinar series. With that, we do hope that you join us for our next webinar, which is Strategic Question Storming for Career Clarity, with Agnes Trin McIntosh, who's in the room today, next Wednesday, September 25th at noon. And on behalf of the Emory Alumni Association, we want to thank you again for learning with us. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks.